Hey, what's up, people? It's finally time! It's here! I have it in my grubby little hands. Maybe not like right this second in my grubby little hands, but it's here. How y'all doing today? Happy Friday. Let me get rid of this ad message in my chat, whatever. It's fine. Yeah, happy Friday. Hope everyone's ready for the weekend and has had a good week. Mine was all right. A lot of gaming news, and we'll probably get some more tonight. I mean, in I think like right now there's. Hold on, is it right now? Is the Summer Games Fest right this second? It is. I don't know what. I'm not gonna co-stream it or react to it, but I just want to like open it up and see what they're showing. That might determine if I do want to watch more. Have to get through a stupid ad for another Jurassic World that doesn't need to exist, and I'm sure will not be good. You know, I'm gonna say my favorite line to spit out whenever I start a stream. I meant to start earlier. I got caught up by some random cleaning that I had to do. And eating lunch and showering. Just, you know, normal mid-afternoon adult stuff. And I mean, I guess I could look at these later. It's just, I mean, they're not going to show big things at Summer Games Fest, right? That's for the Game Awards. Going to be a bunch of games that absolutely no one cares about. I'm watching the screen just to see what's on there right now. It's got to be some kind of indie game. Yeah, it looks like an indie game. Or like maybe a game, or not like AAA, but either AA or high quality single A. I don't know. Anyway, sorry for the for dallying. I'm gonna pause so we can when you least expected. Yeah. Well, I mean, I knew Summer Games Fest was happening today. I just forgot what time it was because I'm thinking, okay, it'll be starting at 5, but no, that's 5 o'clock Eastern, which is now 5:23 Eastern. That's on me, but that's okay. Because I have this. I'm so excited to see this today. You have no idea the kind of roller coaster I've been on the past couple of days. Just the ETAs they've given me. And I got this too. I didn't get the bundle because I didn't have enough to get that at the time, and I wanted to secure something before God only knows how much or how expensive these are going to get later, you know, with tariffs and whatnot. But yeah, they said this is going to get here on Friday initially, and up until yesterday when it actually left, it was still saying Friday, and then like sometime in the afternoon yesterday, it said, yeah, you're going to get this by June 21st. And I'm thinking, well, at least Mario Kart World has a pretty looking cover. But thankfully it was just the FedEx tracking being behind that fucked it up a bit. And can you guys hear me okay? I'm not talking directly into the mic. I've got it to the side a bit. I guess I could just like do this. Yeah, that's fine. I don't really do a lot of like camera streams like this, so I'm not really used to having to angle it and whatnot. But yeah, I was worried I wasn't going to get this until near the end of the month, so I'm very happy to see it. And glad that it's that's intact, because the box that it came in had no extra padding in it. The box was just barely big enough for this to fit in. It had maybe like a half an inch of space, almost like not much more than what's here. Yeah. And doubly worried with the fact that I didn't have any padding because I saw it was GameStop in Staten Island, New York, where what they were doing when people were picking up their pre-orders. They were stapling the receipts to the front of the box, and you know, if you've used a stapler before, if you flip it out to where you have to like press it down on something, you know, you have to put like a little bit of pressure on. And the staple was going through the box and scratching the screen. I can't tell you how upset I would be spending that much money on something like this. Get home and see that shit. Oh man, that was that would be incredibly frustrating. I would hate to be the manager of that store. I would hate to be the guy that did that. Anyway, so here's the console itself. I almost don't want to touch this, man. That is a big screen. Oh, they have it color coded, so you can't put it in the wrong spot. That's handy. And let's see. So game cards in the same spot. Oh, that's weird. Pulls like, again, I'm sorry. I'm not an idiot. I just don't know how to angle this properly. This pulls up. Are the game cards, that looks wider this time. Yeah. It's the game card. You got headphone jack, USB-C. I have no idea what this is. This thing right here. I mean, it's a button, I'm assuming. Doesn't really feel like I can press on it. Maybe it's infrared. And you got volume and power. Nothing like fancy. Oh, the kickstand. That is so much better. Like, oh, that's so much better. Way more angles that you could put it at. And it actually is stable. Here is my, I guess we'll put the Joy-Cons on before we compare. The Joy-Cons are already chunkier too. I like that. Oh man, that actually fits in my hand. It's still like a little small, but like I could use this and it's not like completely uncomfortable and I hate it. All right. Don't know how I feel about the finish though. I don't want to even put the words out into the universe because I feel like I'm going to jinx myself by saying it. But the Joy-Con on this, my original Switch that I got launch-ish window, I think I got it like June of 2017. Those are the same Joy-Cons, no stick drift whatsoever. So hopefully it's the same thing with this. Hopefully. What else we got in here? This is just documentation. Oh. Oh yeah, here are the we got straps. And these are the like the little like mouse things. So if you're going to use them as a mouse for a game, you would attach it to that. And then an HDMI cable that I don't really need. It's an ultra high speed cable, but I'm not gonna get full use out of the fancier graphics. I just have my regular 1080p monitor in here, but I will use that when I connect it to our TV out in the living room. Yeah, before we get to the rest of this stuff, let's just can test out the magnet part. Hey, Casson, welcome in. Oh. So that definitely just like snaps in. Oh, that's nice. Now, if I remember correctly, these are the buttons. Here and here. These will take off the Joy-Con. Oh, that is so much better, dude. That is slick. All right. So here it is. That is fucking huge, dude. Say hi to yourself. Say hi, chat. So here's the Switch 2. Here's the Switch 1. That is like the screen alone is almost as wide as the original Switch. That is crazy, dude. Oh my god. Oh, and what I was gonna show before I had to pull the other stuff out. Here's the kickstand on the original. Like, it's fine. If you set it right, it's okay, but mine eventually, like, it still holds, like, if it's out, but you can see it's wobbly, and then if I'm not using it, like, if it's not engaged, it's been like that for a while now. So that is a huge upgrade on the kickstand. Holy shit. Like, it's nice and rigid. Hey, Kato, what's up, dude? It's nice and rigid, and again, you can, like, go super low. I am worried, like, you might, like, force that and break it if you're not careful, but you do kind of have to be deliberate with how you're setting it. So I'll set that there. What else we got? Probably a bunch of boring shit. Maybe not boring. Oh, that is heavy. Oh, that is chunky. Like, you look at this, you think it's just a wall wart, but it's heavy, dude. Like, it's weighs. Okay, it's not as heavy as the original Switch. That would be stupid, but it's very heavy. Heavier than you would think. We got the Joy-Con grip, which I'll be rocking this for a bit. I did not get a Pro Controller 2 because that would have been way too much money for me personally, but I will pick that up soon. I'm also got a new controller recently for my birthday. I'll be testing that out. But yeah, I think with how big the new Joy-Con are, this will be fine for a bit to try out all the new stuff. So we got power, we got USB-C to C, which I don't really need right this second. And then the actual dock itself, which, you know, I mean, isn't boring. They've got upgrades here, and I like the way the new dock looks. Let me go ahead and just make some room for us here. We don't need any of this other stuff out. Hope you guys have enjoyed this unboxing segment of the stream. I know I have. I'm a little sad that my box is kind of beat up. Might be hard to see on stream, but like maybe some very slight, I don't know, sun damage or like moisture or something. Just I like to keep the boxes, or I've been doing that with the more recent consoles. Not like a huge deal. Oh, it's making my hands feel like all grody. Let me wash my hands real quick. I know that sounds dumb, but when I'm handling this, I want it to not be dusty. You know what I was thinking when I went to go wash my hands? It probably wasn't like sun damage or moisture damage, it's the box like shifting around, like scooching inside of the Walmart box, right? So, anyway. Yeah, let's look at the dock. One thing I am a big fan of, besides just like the look of it, that's sleek. Nintendo really was gonna make sure. You look at that, you look at this box, they're not repeating the Wii U situation. Switch 2! This is the better one. Buy this one. Give us your money for this one. I think that's really funny. Also, I mean, it makes sense. But it's pretty funny. Ah! That shit just fell off, man. I actually don't mind this being detachable because less fiddly than the door on the current dock. Built-in Ethernet. It's a little hard to, you can see right there. Built-in Ethernet. I love that. I thought that was micro USB for a second. I was going to be very confused. Yeah. Yeah, it looks nice. Is this magnetized or just like, yeah, just chunks in? All right, so. Hope the sliding action on this is better than the first one. That feels better. So that's switch 1. Where did I put it? Where did I put it? There's switch 2. And there's the switch 1 dock. Yeah, that just looks very sleek. I like what they did with the Joy-Con. I mean, I like this too, but I like this. And what I was describing for the original dock, like, that's fine, but it just feels sort of... Oh, that one's broke now too. Not broke, just detached. There we go. Yeah, I feel like it'd be easier to make changes for stuff you have plugged in if it just comes off. So I can appreciate that design. Alright, so I'm going to blue ball you guys. We're not jumping right into Mario Kart 2. Mario Kart 2. We're not jumping right into Mario Kart World on the Switch 2. How does this lift up? I'm worried about, like, scratching the screen and stuff, but oh my god, that screen is just fucking massive. I really cannot overstate just how fucking big this thing is, dude. There's the Switch 2. Here's my phone. Here's a banana. It's just huge, man. Breaking. Gamer finds out by putting a banana on his Switch 2 screen. It irreversibly breaks it. Oh yeah, and then I don't think you were here for this, Kato. $450 worth of big though? I mean, it is a very big upgrade hardware-wise. So yes, I'm gonna say so. Look at that shit, Kato. The entire screen on this is almost, like, this is almost as wide as the screen on here. And I like that the bezel was trimmed down. I mean, I can't really see it right this second because I'm not. Okay, well, no, it's still like. That will probably. No, you can see it. It's not like super thin. It's a lot thinner on the top and bottom. A little trickier to see that part, but. That is just a big upgrade. So. I guess I could, I kind of want, I'm going to play this. I'm not going to stream the games on this here, obviously. We'll get the dock set up. I just want to see what it looks like. Oh, those Joy-Con feel nice, or the joysticks. Yeah, we'll do the setup on stream. Let me get it connected. Fingers crossed they fix drift. They use the same sort of stuff for this Joy-Con. Like clicky noise? I don't know if that was picking up. You'll hear it when I connect it to when we pull the capture card. Where's the speaker on this? Can you hear that? All right. Oh wait, no, that cord, we do need that cord. That's for the power brick. That might be a little useful, yeah. That is a very good sound. There's also some music playing you can't hear right this second, but not quite like 3DS or Wii U levels of whimsy and fun, but it's better than... I don't think the Switch one had anything, any sort of music playing when you went through setup. Oh, it doesn't matter, just let me play the games, bro. Bitch, it does matter. Nintendo has sauce when it comes to that, and not many other companies do that. Well, Sony did it for some of their... I think the PS3 did it. Maybe the PS4. It just feels like as we go through more generations that we're losing out on more of that, you know? Don't know what we're talking about? The snappies? The sound effect from the screen. That. What's up, Claire? How's it going? Where's my HDMI cord? There it is. Yeah. Oh, we get 2 USB on the front? 2 USB on the front? Are you fucking kidding me? Let's fucking go! Thank God the Ethernet is built in this time, dude. Holy shit. Can be free of that dongle. Although with the amount of times I move HDMI around, like if I'm streaming one console or switching to retro or Xbox or whatever, this might start to get annoying, but small price to pay. What I've seen so far, that might be the fact that patches. I don't know, maybe it's not supposed to? Seems like it's... Alright. So that Ethernet cord was all dusty and gross too. Let me wash my hands one more time. I'll be right back. Okay. There's one in the back too, right? US... I don't think there's one in the back. Oh. Well... Okay, yeah, I'm starting to not like the way they did the cover. Oh, just two. Just two USB, so I guess it's not necessarily an upgrade. You did take that back panel off. I guess you could just leave it off, but I'll leave it on for now. I need to get the Joy-Con grip that charges. Alright, can I detach these without breaking anything? Dude, that's so nice how it detaches. Rainlight couldn't do it on Switch 1. It's supposed to be 1080p. Alright, I was instinctively trying to do this. Oh, that's nice. Kickstand is so good. Yeah, man. I played a little bit on portable on Switch 1. I don't go out enough to really need it, but I got enough use out of it, I'd say. I might get more out of it this time just because it's so much nicer, you know? Alright, did I set this up right? Hold on, pause. Alright, so if I did this right, it should go like... Bam. Imagine Balatro on it? Yeah. Like, for real, no. Lazy 120 frames per second Balatro on the big screen, bro? Not hunched over, I got 144, it's better. No. Chilling on the couch, like, oh, that's a straight flush, bro. Let's go. Although I will say, this is the best way to play Balatro. Although, you get this shit, and then you get, hold on, pause, and then you get, how does this attach? And you get this shit. You got Balatro from the couch with a mouse. Not like there was any way to do that before. Shit, how do I take it out of this thing? We just yank it? Probably don't just yank it. There's a little button. I think. Oh no, you do just yank it. Just crank it and yank it. What is this layout, Pog? Dude, you want to see Pog, Hippo? You missed it. How about this shit, bro? How about this shit, bro? You guys missed this. Gotta get here at the start for all the hype stuff, yeah? Then we go here. Then we go back here. I told you, I've been doing some fucking work, man. I probably have like 20, maybe 20 or so hours clocked on just streamer, but I need to add it to, I was telling Claire, I need to add it to Steam so I can, what can I, so I can log my hours. Awesome, thank you. All right. Edge of the video instead of the center. That's because I was looking at this monitor is the main like stream monitor. So I got OBS, I got UNerds like right here. And then over here. Oh, I'm looking at the right thing because I have specific triggers. So if we were to say, oh, I don't know, let's fuck Switch 2, I'm gonna go start some, let's play some Balatro today, yeah? Oh wait, now I'm over here, bitch! Now I'm over here, bitch! What are you gonna do? I'm not gonna do anything, motherfucker. Boo yourself. What am I doing? Did I change the language? Pause. We're not in the Netherlands. Being mean to me, boo. Boo cry about it. Welcome in, Nippo. How y'all doing today? I hope everyone's doing good. I said that earlier, but we had more people here, so I'll just repeat it. I could like be moved over a little bit more, I guess. All right. The Americas. Wait. The Americas? As far as I'm concerned, there's only one America. The right one? No, I'm kidding. Sorry. I shouldn't kid about that. That's sort of grody. I don't know how I feel about the grip on this. Like, it's nice. It feels wider. It's not like trying to, instead of like this, it's like this, so it feels more natural. Expect me to read that shit. Just realized maybe I should not have that up for just a second here. Danny, welcome in. How's it going? I promise I didn't switch to that just to show off the transition again. It really is not that hard to set up. If I can do it, anyone can do it. Okay, I don't think we have any more sensitive information. I am not in Los Angeles, Vancouver. Kato, what's our time zone? Is it -5? I know we're central, but like, is it gonna say central in here? No, it says Chicago. I guess Chicago. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Fashion's typing to me? Oh, hell yeah. Bad time zone, best time zone. With Nintendo Switch 2, you can play games wherever you want, however you want. Whenever, however. And adjust the stand to get the best viewing angle. That is sick. You can also connect the AC adapter to the top, also sick. Hi, Bash. I couldn't figure out my time zone here, I'm stupid. Here, let me help you out, bro. Hold on, I'm gonna find it first try. It's, pause. Shit, do I? I know it. Hold on. Pause. I lived in the Eastern time zone for most of my life. It is just New York, right? Yeah, it's New York. Why don't they have just like Eastern, Central, or whatever? Oh, that's because there's more than 3 time zones. Oh, shut up. Shut up, bitch. I've now realized that you got the chat is not looking great against a white screen like this, but we'll change to dark mode once we get into settings. Yeah, you want New York. I'm sure you probably already figured that out anyways. Adjusted to get the best viewing angle. Detach the Joy-Con 2 controllers as shown. No, I'm not going to start that joke. I'm just going to say that, you know who you are? One of my Joy-Cons, they were forced off without pressing, on the original Switch, was forced off without pressing this first. Yeah, the magnetic shit is nice. Use the accessories that come with the system to hold the Joy-Con 2 controllers in multiple ways. When attached to a grip, a pair of Joy-Con 2 function as a single controller. Yeah. Remove them, press the button on the back, and slide. Isn't Georgia and New York in the same time zone? Yes. Use the straps when you hold a Joy-Con 2 in each hand. I'm trying to think of what... I don't feel like there's going to be many games made like that. Sure, there's the... I really wish I could think of the name because I don't want to just call it wheelchair basketball. But that is what it is. It's wheelchair basketball Rocket League. But I don't know how many games are going to come out where they use both of them. Plenty of games are going to use just one, dude. Metroid Prime 4 with mouse controls? Bro, I'm coming already. Remove the strap. Hold the release button on the back of the Joy-Con 2. Oh, okay. I just yanked the strap, so it's my bad. Choose a style. You can change it at any time. Ready to update the system? Please don't be a big update. Gonna get some salads from Zaxby's. Oh, I miss Zaxby's. Metroid Prime 4 has been announced for, I think, like a year now. Motherfucker went back to my computer screen. But it's going to be on the original Switch too. It's not just Switch 2. It'll be better on Switch 2. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do this. Sorry, guys. I did not get a Express SD. Wait, EX. I have an SD card. I haven't used it. I'm pretty sure it's not EX, but I'm gonna look just in case. It is not. It's XC. Alex is using a green screen? Yeah, didn't you know? Psych, it's just the NVIDIA background removal. Dude, this shit is so fucking good. It is ridiculous. It is scary how good that is. Ow, I fucking stubbed my toe trying to move my chair. Okay. I don't really plan on downloading a bunch of stuff anyways. It's got 256 gigabytes internal storage. Way better than 32, so that'll be enough for me for right now. My toe, my toe. Something with a QR code? Dude, I don't... Yeah, fuck yeah, man. They're already, like, in the future a bit more here. I love it. Anyone got plans this weekend? Besides playing an unhealthy amount of Switch 2 stuff? Dude, lo-fi beats to set up your Switch 2 too? I'm here for it. Enter the following code on your Nintendo Switch 2. Leave for Spokane on Sunday. Move the system and the source system close together to transfer data. How close are we talking here? Ooh, we're getting close, huh? It's kind of awkward because it's in a dock, but maybe I just like. I need a bigger side table. I don't have enough room on this. Hopefully the dock doesn't impede this process. Leave your Spokane on side. That's sick, Kato. Can't watch this part. Why not? Does it take a long time? Please do the following on the source Nintendo Switch system. Why are you telling me that like after telling me to get it closer to it? Bitch. Yeah, this the blue Joy-Con, it still comes out. Like, it stays locked. Like, I have to put some force into it. It's not super hard, but it does come up without pressing the button. Not a huge deal. It's been fine. It still works. Alright, open the home menu and select system settings, system. Oh, I probably have to do a system update on the... Oh, motherfucker! This is what I get for doing a, wanting to unbox it on stream. You want to watch? Oh, you're joking. Well, I'm updating the software. Yes, close Cookie Clicker. Cookie Clicker low-key was kind of laggy. Actually, high-key laggy on here. I wonder what it's like on the Switch 2. Sorry, Danny, were you asking me what's that, or Kato? I'm not trying to ignore messages. I'm just not used to having many folks in here. Alright, so we got this shit updated. System settings, system transfer. You can keep playing compatible Nintendo Switch software on the Nintendo Switch 2 system. Yeah. The two options on here, it says make sure you have your Nintendo Switch 2 system ready, and it says done, and then the second option is I don't have a Nintendo Switch 2 yet. Starting a system transfer, yeah. Users who have not linked a Nintendo account will be removed from the system and transferred. Oh, okay. Rory's not touched this particular Switch in a long time, so it's fine. Save data will be removed from the system and transferred. Okay. Fine, I guess. Connect the AC adapter. Are you serious, man? No. I'm not going to. Oh, it doesn't let me do it unless I connect. Alright. Fuck me, Nintendo. Kinda already did when I went to check out. Yeah. What are you going to Washington for, Kato? I'm just plug that shit into my phone. Like the chat display, looks neato. You're impatient the system transfer? That's fair. I wonder if I can leave it on my desk. I don't want to have to angle this cord. Salads are 7 more a piece. 7 more than the base price? Holy shit, dude. So apologies if this takes a while. I really should have just done this off stream, but I couldn't help myself. I wanted to unbox it on stream here. I'm also kind of sad that we don't have the Pikmin here, moving our shit like they did with the Wii and Wii U. Open packs? What packs? Dude, I want to open some packs. The Final Fantasy Magic the Gathering set comes out soon. Packs of games? I don't have any packs. What are you talking about? I could open Mario Kart. I haven't done that yet. $11 minutes ain't bad. Go through the manual, bro. How? I know you don't pay attention to the gaming news as much anymore, Hippo, but come on, man. You're better than that. Saving hundreds of monies per month. Yeah, what you do is you just move somewhere that has literally only 2 major fast food restaurants. And then none of the local places are on DoorDash. And then you're forced to close because it's useless to keep the account. Couldn't be me. Games don't come with manuals anymore, Hippo. Are you for real, bro? That's been a thing for a while now. Well, I guess you mostly buy digital, don't you? There you go. Here, chat. You want to huff? You want to smell? Take a big whiff. Take a whiff. Let me know when you're done. You get a big sniff. It actually doesn't smell like much. I'm not gonna lick it unless someone resubs. I'm not a circus monkey that's just gonna do what you guys want. Just because you tell me to. Also, The game, I don't like that they're red now. I get that they have to distinguish that it's a different console, but you can barely see the art. It's got some night here. Let me just, like, it looks nice. And it's Mario Kart. That cover is sick, though. Alright, it's too bright in here to really show it properly. A world of racing awaits. And the carts are now red. They're lighter, actually. Not that they were heavy to begin with. Got a sub? Did I get a sub? I don't, Kato, I would see I would hear something. I'm not licking it, no! I'm not your circus monkey. I'm only your circus monkey if you pay me for it. Clary sub? Wait, hold on. Where? I didn't get the notification. Where's the notification? Am I blind? Nothing came up in chat. It's supposed to announce it when it does. It shows it on my regular Twitch chat, but not in here. What the fuck, bro? Alright. You want your Sodi reward. Did you redeem something? Alright. Sorry, StreamerBot's not working the way it's supposed to. Mario Kart World? It's the red flavor. Doesn't smell spicy. Don't lick it. Don't lick it. Do not lick it. Oh, now I'm glad I made someone pay for that. Jesus Christ. Check Discord. I believe you, Kato. I have my Twitch chat up. Redeemed. Why is it? Why did it not trigger? It's supposed to trigger automatically. Pause. Stuff might be broken. I'm not doing it again when Hippo gets back. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out why the bot isn't showing messages in chat. Not showing events, man. What? Did your key expire? It shouldn't have. Hang on, guys. I don't want to get balls deep in the stream and find out that other stuff's broken. Of course, it works perfectly fine up until, like, stream starts. Oh, now it wants to work.
Okay, well, at least I know my rewards are set up correctly. Like, some of them work, just some of them don't. It's not very big brain of me, I'm sorry. I thought I had it working, but it's just really unfortunate. Like, there's no brain in here. It's just it's like a teeny little, like, peanut and a bunch of just hot air. Okay, Kato, I'm gonna just test this because you redeemed it, so it was supposed to do It was supposed to do this.
You sure about that?
Yes, I am sure about that.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
How come that didn't work?
Boo this man! Boo!
Okay, that one worked. I didn't hear that one. For some reason, I hear one of them, but I don't hear the other. Alright, well, at the very least, if that one came up, I'm gonna try redeeming it. I have infinite points because I'm the stream master.
You sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that?
I don't know, bro. I don't know. Like, it's supposed to work. I redeemed it and it worked. Maybe it was just... Maybe we reconnected and that fixed it. Anyway, my bot still isn't connected, so I don't know. It's not posting the announcements. I guess that's true because we haven't started playing a game yet. I'm dilly-dallying. I'm dallying and dillying. Not necessarily in that order. Where's the bot? Platforms. I'm gonna log out. I'm gonna log in. Gonna log in and jack off. We're gonna open chat back up. Is the bot finally in here? The bot still isn't in here. Okay, well, I'm seeing the events now. I don't see your sub still clear in there, but that's because I can only see new events. Hopefully I'll see the next one. I missed so much fucking chat, Jesus. Too impatient, system transfer packet games. Ordering is complicated here because it's gated. I have to socialize with people. Oh, it wasn't. That's not my thing. The problem is we live in the middle of nowhere, so there's nothing here. Like the two options we have, I am like pretty grateful for those because I get a new appreciation for Subway and Dairy Queen. Like for the, I didn't really eat much Subway before. I went there maybe 2 or 3 times because my area had Firehouse and eventually Jersey Mike's and also Which. So like, and like I think there was at least one like okayish local spot. But by the time I was eating those kinds of sandwiches, I went to Firehouse. So why the fuck would you go to Subway, right? But Subway's okay. It's not my favorite, but they're pretty good. And Dairy Queen, like the few times we've been so far up here, it's been legit really good. Like it's always hot. Fries are good. They have a really like legitimately really good cheese curds. Tori will attest to that. Don't take my word for it just alone. But yeah. There's also good local places, of course. That's the main thing up here. But yeah, the Subway is on DoorDash, but I'm not gonna keep a Dash Pass sub for that. So I'm being forced to save money is what I'm getting at. Knife on stream, don't forget to lick Coward, set your reward. That's where we found out shit wasn't working. Slick. Ooh, nice, you got a sub, lick it. Lol, lick it, Clary sub. Wow, I actually did the sub. That not meaning check Discord, ooh, red. Amazing. Have to do it again. Changing baby. Stinky little baby. Is your stinky little baby has pooped 3 times today. Regenerated your key. I don't think that works the way you're saying it. No, it might still do that. I don't know. Streamer bot's kind of different from the other bots I've used so far. Voice change. What the hell did I come back to? If you missed it, redeem boo. Sure about that, game over. Alright. Alex the Red Flanders. I'm gonna go buy food. Your ass better be fixed by the time I get back. Fixed what? This is me! I turned the filter off, Hippo. What are you talking about? Why can't you accept me for me, motherfucker? Hello? Can't take anything you say seriously
right now. I can't take anything. Oh, okay, I'm back. Here, just do this. Instant 30-second clip to the Discord. To a specific channel in Discord, too. Anyone can use that, by the way. I've been putting a lot of work into the stream, so I'm really trying to not just go live and play games and talk. I've got a lot, well, not like a lot, but several point rewards now. I've got a lot more commands. I've got just a lot of automated stuff. So I really am trying to get more interactivity going on. So please, if you see something that you think is funny, exclamation point clip. I don't have any permissions for it. I don't have any cooldowns. Spam it, please. I'm trying to get shit going here, you know?
You sure about that?
Yes, I am.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
I am. Why do you doubt me? And I know you guys have some points saved up, so that's why I made some of them kind of expensive. I don't know if I set maxes for those. Anyways, system transfer's done. Let's stop yapping and start gaming. Theme color will be transferred over. Press the home button. We get a little welcome video. And we get a little bit of fanfare. Would love if there was like some music or something.
What did you do? What have you done? Why would you turn that on? Claire, did you don't comprehend what you've started. Oh, it's downloading everything. It's downloading everything. Oh my god, it's downloading everything, dude. Is it gonna do this in the background, or do I have to... Is it gonna, like, slow shit down if I don't know, man. Dude, I'm kind of excited I'm really excited, honestly, not kind of. Just to see, all the performance upgrades, especially for this fucking game. And then also this, like, Lock 60 on Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, I'm gonna go ham on that. I'm gonna go sicko mode. Couch Balatro, like we were saying earlier. What else? I saw someone saying there was like maybe a little bit of improvements for this, but I don't know by how much. What else really needs updates? I guess Rise, maybe that'd be full 60. Like, I'll probably try a lot of demos for stuff I either don't own or have gotten rid of. I really want to see how this runs on here, because I liked what I played, but I just, the performance was kind of bad. Not as bad as Scarlet and Violet, of course, but not great. Diablo 3 and Diablo 2 getting performance buffs would be pretty nice. What else we got? This one and Tears of the Kingdom. This run's not great on here, or on Switch 2, or Switch 1, rather. We can see how that goes. I didn't get, like, super sicko crazy runs on this yet on Switch, so I don't really have a frame of reference, but I'm pretty sure it would be kind of bad when you get a crazy run going. Thanos, who's Thanos? This is Giga Chad. What else was running slow? Doom 3 is, I think, might have already been locked 60. I forget. I need to get the full game of this. I really want to play that, especially watching NL play it, Northernlion play it recently. I think that's the majority of, like, the really poor performing games. Yeah. Wait, show more? No, re-download. Surprised he didn't have Doom music play for Giga Chad. Yeah, I mean, not everyone knows what Doom music is. I could do that. I could just make Doom music for a different reward. I don't know. I've been spending a lot of time on it. I'm going to be spending more time on it, so rest assured. Well, that's something Doom related. I just couldn't think of anything off the top of my head. Is it still hard to take what I'm saying seriously? Not like you guys could really do that in the first place, right? Groups! I like groups! What if I start talking like this? Does it sound really bad? Does it sound like super duper deep? Or does it just sound like muddy and impossible to perceive and comprehend what's coming out of my mouth? I am not also streaming to YouTube today because this is my first full-fledged stream with, like, I had multi-stream set up and I had a couple of nicer things going, but this is my first real big boy full stream with, like, the crazy shit, like the new rewards, the fancy transitions, all the other stuff. So, I'll stream again to YouTube and Twitch simultaneously. I did one. I did my first Diddy Kong Racing session to both sites, but after I was done with that stream and I was trying to, you know, work on it and get all the stuff set up, anytime I tried to resize my camera, OBS crashed. Every single time. And I don't know why, but I had to uninstall the plugin, or the, I don't know if it's like plugin. It feels like a super turbo HD plugin. But yeah, I had to uninstall the Stream Elements thing, and that fixed it. But if I don't have to resize my camera anymore, when I'm changing stuff, I'll try it. So I think I truly forget just how long 5 minutes can take, because I feel like I'm not. I should be back to normal now. Silly card game.
Game is ready. Are we on just chatting still? I feel like I might have. Oh, there we go. Right as I was talking about it. Yeah, I do want to eventually stream to YouTube again. Let's try it out. This is not a 120 frames per second monitor, but it is 60. Literally the very first game I'm playing on this. It's kind of sad, isn't it? Oh, that is so much better, dude. I feel like it got a recent performance update because I played it on my regular Switch recently and it seemed to be okay. I think I still have a couple little emotes too, although I have to go over to Twitch chat to punch them in. Yeah, those are the three I have. You know what, let's just play it. I'm gonna get sucked into an actual run, aren't I? Quick, someone tell me to force close this. Someone tell me to shut it down. Oh, but we just got a straight flush. That's good juju, man. Maybe we do need to play this. Oh, hold on. I forgot. We need to, we're playing Balatro, so we are going to do this. Oh no, it turned off the game capture because that trigger assumes like you can have the bot recognize the process for the game. So it's like the second you open, it'll automate all the shit that you tell it to. Aura card? I can stop playing anytime I want. Jack of Clubs. Okay, we're not going to do that. We're going to play a flush with the... I forgot we're on Plasma deck, so you don't really need any multipliers right away. All right, I'm closing it. I'm closing it. I don't have a problem, okay? I don't have a problem.
You sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that?
You know what? I'm not sure. Honestly, I do have a problem, okay? Ass off. Getting off my ass. Everyone on DoorDash is too expensive. Alright, Hip. See you later. Okay, so that's still a little framey, but I mean, the console just came out. People need time to update it and stuff, you know? Don't show this to me. Oh wait, those are different sounds. Ooh, I like that. Okay, so more importantly, before we... Well, we're not going to play Mario Kart first. I am... The thing is, when I boot that game up and I start playing it, I'm gonna get sucked in. I'm gonna get sucked in and sucked off. And I want to wait. So, first, I want to check out the GameCube stuff. But I need to get my sub upgraded. You just got away from this game? Did you play it again? Oh no. Oh wait, it was laggy at first. It seems okay now. Oh, holy shit. Available until 6:10? Yeah, I need to get these. Pause. I know what the rewards are, man. Right, okay. But I only have 90 coins. They even got the Satella view? That's sick. How do they not have the American Super Game Boy, but they have these two? That's lame. Although I do like the way this looks. Till June 10th. I gotta earn some points, man. I have 40 coins left. I wish they didn't make these limited time, man. Oh, this is the Switch Online app. They've been doing this for a while now. Well, they'll have different rewards that you can earn by you just complete missions, like play this classic game today, or play multiplayer in this title, or some shit. And then you can redeem your silver or platinum points to get icons, and I think maybe like a couple other things. Gotta get the Famicom colors. And definitely gotta get this. I'm gonna go... which one did I have? I had the purple one. I had the purple one, and I had a... Oh, I can't get this until I become... Alright. Is this gonna show any information I don't want you guys to see? Maybe we'll just hide this for a second. I'm so glad they're doing the QR code shit. I got really tired of typing in my password on the original Switch. Gotta do two-step verification, of course. Oakleus, what's up, dude? Welcome in. Okay, I'm gonna be charged. Is that $38.74 today? Something your dumb stream will never have. Hey, he's working on it. His current stream won't. His new stream will, right? Right. Better. All right. Individual membership. I don't need the family. I gotta sign in. Oh my god. Oh, I should probably hit remember me, yeah? That'd be a good idea. Remember me. And hold me in your arms, remember me. Okay, you're all crying now? I'm not crying. I just fucking signed in, god damn it. Incorrect password. No, I'm pretty sure that's the right one. Y'all seen Coco? Keep complaining it won't. But I don't complain, I'll forget about it. This is true. Not to be paid with funds. Movie Coco, yes. I was just mumbling a line from the song. We have expansion pack for a year now. All right, you guys are allowed to see the screen again. I can get my GameCube pictures. Yay! I spent $40 to get these. Not just these, of course. Ooh, we get. I don't know. Like I like the GameCube player, obviously, or the Game Boy player, but something about this, that's iconic, man. You gotta get that. Makes you cry from time to time. I cannot listen to that song without crying. It destroys me. Okay, I'm gonna definitely do some of these missions off stream and get all the rest of those. Remember Me from Coco, the Pixar movie. Oh, here you go, Claire. You have until June 30th to get an expansion pass sub and get these. Chrome GameCube guy yourself. No Switch 2 for you. You're a PC only gamer. That's fair. Alright, so rewards for Wave 1 will be available until June 11th. Dude, that's like in 5 days. I don't really care about those as much. I do want the GameCube controller. That's not super important. Lost connection? No, it's definitely plugged in. Toy Story 3 ruined your life. It was pretty sad. I think Pixar was, or not Pixar. Coco was more sad. Hang on. All right, so let's try this again. It's just a cosmetic Ethernet port? Maybe. DLC download complete? Hold on. It says I'm not connected. Is it fucking calling me a liar? I don't fucking know, dude. That's a lot of backup save data. I'm a fancy boy. I got the expansion pack now. Give me that shit. I hit remember me. God fucking damn it, dude. I think I don't know if I'd rather type in my password every time on the Switch. It's just the two-factor authentication that gets annoying. Y'all ever worked a job where they have you do like every time you have to log in for the day, two-factor authentication, and do it for like 3 or 4 different things? Gonna be able to play Pokemon Coliseum. It's not on there, but yeah, it'll eventually be on there. I know they teased it. I'm gonna be able to play Pokemon Legends Arceus with a decent frame rate. Oh, this is the whole ass eShop. Oh, that loads so much faster. Holy shit. Look how quick this loads. Dude. That is so fast. I can't overstate enough. Like, welcome to Tourist 10. Hold on. Pause. I've heard it's really good. I've heard there's a ton of mini games. I've heard it's good. Oh, but Astrobot was free. Well, I mean, different companies do things differently. I don't know. I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna check it out because I want to see. I mean, it's bestsellers. This isn't ranked. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it right now. Can you guys? Upgrade packs are only 10. Yeah, I'm also gonna get Breath of the Wild, and that's it for Alex on this. Might as well just grab that right now before I unhide the stuff. Do I need a digital copy of this, or is it just any copy? Sold separately. I'm sure the physical copy will be fine. With the Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack membership, you can download and play this content at no additional cost. Oh shit, dude! Hell yeah, dude! Wait, why is it asking me to pay then? I probably need to go in the expansion pack section to... There we go. I just, for so long, I haven't gotten the expansion pack thing. Expansion pass. Pack or pack? Expansion pack. I haven't gotten that for so long that I didn't really think about, like, hey, this is it actually has good value. Just link to the 7 TV emotes for Claire's stream. Which emo was that? Peepo Stop? Well, shit, that's $10 we can do something else with. Hell, let's download the one for Tears of the Kingdom, too. I'm really glad there's so much more room on this. I don't need to spend another $10. It's fine. The eShop moving this much faster is crazy. It's... How many... Raise your hand in chat if you've played this, if you own or have used a Switch and been on the eShop and seen how bad the software is. Like, it's just burning dumpster fire, white hot garbage, just awful. Complete dog shit. Raise your hand if you used it. While I look at Peepo Stop. Oh, but that's a cop. We don't fuck with cops. A cab. You give me a peepo stop that's not a pig. We're good. Did I miss any other chat? Sounds of shattering glass and destruction in the background. Yeah. He's going to the rage room. Recommendations will be refreshed every Saturday. So they have like a Steam Discovery queue in here too. That's cool. Is this a Balatro stream or was it all just a big scam to get you here? Did someone tell you it was a Balatro stream? These are all games I already own on Steam or don't want. Well, that's on sale, but I have it. Oh, wait, I don't own this one actually.
Rated M from a...
Dude, this is really slick. Getting new recommendations every week. I'm trying to remember what I'll say. Oh, and they have a filter so you can see. Oh my god, dude. I'm getting excited over like some what would be mundane to most people, but just actually having some quality of life in here is crazy. What about the anaglyph deck? No, I'm more the plasma deck, Andrew. Did anyone ever play Golf Story? It's only $2. I kind of want to get it. And then not play it for like 3 years. When does this sale end? 12 days. Okay, we don't need it right this second. All right, let's... You guys want to actually play a game? You want to play a game? Oh shit. KI gold? Play to unlock. Yeah, I might do that. I don't know. Fuck it. Oh yeah, I can download this app now too. No, I can't, I guess. Oh, this is just showing like the history of it. I'm just downloading apps that I didn't have, so we're almost there, I promise. Let me find out what the police at. No. I have that installed. I think I downloaded it on my Switch one, but I never got the sub. Oh, I forgot they have separate apps. There's a mature 17 and up, and then there's the regular one. It's kind of funny. There we go. Did he call it racing on here? I don't think it is yet. Alright. I guess, like... Anything else we want to look at? I don't think so. Virtual game card added. Some digital software and downloadable content will include a virtual game card when purchased. Once loaded, the game icon will be added to the home menu and you'll be able to play that game. See your virtual game cards, go to the home menu and select the card option. I'm not playing this game, Oakley's. I will give you Madge. How do I... Oh, this is 7TV? I gotta go to BTTV. I'm a BTTV, Marty. Is it not adding? Am I full? Am I full up? How do I see my emotes? I see wokage. I am capped out. What could we get rid of? Get rid of TG Sway. I need to get more slots, honestly. I gotta refresh my chat too. I want to see the new emotes. Didn't work. The fuck? Oh, it's not on here. Oh, it is. Where is it? I'm blind. No, it's there. Yeah, maybe it just needs time to work out the kinks. It's working for you. Okay. Yo, Mike, what's up, dude? Welcome in. Happy Friday, dude. Go license for that. British cop stole your skateboard in high school. Stole or confiscated? How big was this hat? Probably pretty big. How you liking it so far? Well, we're about to play the first game. Technically speaking, you'll laugh at this. The first game that I booted up was Balatro. I had to see if it ran better, you know? It does. It's much better. But we did unboxing. We did actually, sorry, I just realized one thing. I've got an extra cam plugged in that I had for the unboxing just in case, but we don't need it. So let's free up some CPU. Be gone, C920. Yeah, we unboxed it. When we did the system transfer. Got a couple of we got one game, got the welcome tour. And well, no, I got that and the expansion pass. Downloading stuff. So we're about to actually play some games, but like first impressions hardware wise and on a software level, it's great. Like I don't know how much you've been on the Switch eShop, but you know how bad the Switch eShop is, right? Right, Michael? Updated your BIOS for the first time in years, so you have like a new gaming system too now. Nice. Let me show you the Switch 2 eShop. Watch how quick it loads. Okay, it wasn't like super fast, but still way faster than the original. And going from one section to another, watch this. Look at that. They have a recommendations thing, so it's like the Steam Discovery Cube. I feel it's also just organized and laid out way better. Like, it's a functioning app. It's not just like a busted web browser that they somehow kept going for, and still have going, for 8+ years. It worked. And once you got to downloading your game, it was fine, but I feel like the downloads have been faster too. I mean, I'm sure it's a higher capacity Ethernet port. I don't know to what degree, but anything took like 5 minutes, yeah. And just as the years went, like, it was okay when it first came out. Oh, this is kind of slow, but surely they'll make it better, right? No. And as the years go on, it just got like worse and worse. More literal trash got put on there. Joy-Cons feel nice. The thing is fucking huge. The screen is really big and nice. I like the magnetic triggers, so you just pull this thing right here. That comes off right away. Then you put it back on. Slots in. Good first impressions, but let's actually play a game. Weird thing to say. And oh wait, no, we gotta download it first. Well, we might just play this first while the other one's gone. Many other things are still pending. I didn't want it to download literally everything, mind you. There's not too many. There's actually still a few left. Overweight Pizza Muncher, welcome in. Balatro on Switch 2, not yet. We're going to, well, we played it earlier. It was the very first game I booted up, but we're not going to play anymore because I don't have a problem. I am in control of my Balatro addiction. We're going to check out the Nintendo GameCube Classics. I don't know why I'm stuttering. I'm talking too damn much. I'm too excited. There's too much going on, man. Why are there two European? European and I'm a poopin'. Probably update your game category? Nah, it's fine. Speed Switch 2 is so good. I'm liking it a lot so far. Check the controls for each title and change button mapping from view, change game controls. That's sick that you can actually remap them. Play Mario Kart World Online later when I do? Yeah. Probably. See how this looks. Doctor gets so hot you can make pizza on it. I mean, the original one got hot. Would you say it's any hotter than that?
Soul Calibur 2.
Yeah, it looks crisp. Oh. I have the, let's see if the controller adapter works. That's over here. Look at a goddamn dog chasing a squirrel today, man. Never had the original, only Switch Lite. Oh. Yeah, it got pretty hot. The original one. This is the Mayflash GameCube controller adapter. And an OEM controller. I don't think it's going to work. I'm not super confident in that. This thing is so dusty. Maybe it's because we already had the app open. What's up? I don't know. What do you want to eat? What do you want to eat? I'm not like you're wanting to go out, or so I'm still going to be going for a little bit. I mean, I don't know when I'm specifically going to stop. It might be an hour or two. And I haven't been live that long. All right, no, where are you going? All right, guys. Slight change of plans. I'm going to have to. I'm gonna go pick up dinner, and then also eat dinner with Tori. And I mistimed the start of this basically. And after that, we'll come back. We'll go live. We'll actually play some games. Yeah, I just took too long doing other stuff, which if I had started earlier might not have been a problem, but it won't be too long. It'll be like maybe hour and a half, maybe two, if that. And then we'll be able to stream longer. The Joy-Cons are pretty good as well. Controller attachment is straight up shit. This thing? I don't think it's shit. Feels pretty comfy. But I hope y'all can take a rain check and come back later. I hate getting this far into a stream and having to bounce like that, but people are hungry, then you gotta eat, right? What other messages did I miss? Oh, Pizza Muncher, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. I did not get a Pro Controller. I do want it. Sold out everywhere. Joy-Cons aren't good. I'm not going for the Ethernet again. Menu selection noises sound like the opening to Kraftwerk's Man Machine. Menu opening? Like that? Alright. Anyway, I guess, like, I could still, like, I don't know, you guys want to see something else I've been working on? Oh, the little clicks like this. I haven't heard that song in a while, so I'd have to go listen to it. Yeah, I got something else I was cooking up recently, and y'all can see that. But pretend this isn't like the actual end. We'll still be back later. I'm gonna check one thing before we end. All right, yeah, we'll go ahead and end, and we'll be back in an hour or two for more Switch 2, actual Switch 2 stuff, not just setup and shenanigans. All right, see you guys soon. I am waving awkwardly. I forgot what my thing was. Okay, it is fucking damn it, Alex, you fool, you buffoon. Okay, I'm actually leaving now. Bye. See you later.